That's the fourth Thursday of the month. Gavel sound. You like that? Got a little music. We are Music City. Yeah. I don't have any musical abilities other than to listen to it, but that ain't so bad, right? I do snap on count though. So, good afternoon. Welcome to the MTA Board meeting. I think we can officially say we're almost in the summer months with school out or out tomorrow. So, today is last day. Today's last day. So here we are and approaching a holiday weekend. So call the meeting in order. And first on the agenda is our roll call. Jessica Dobbin. Present. Walter Searcy. Janet Miller. Present. And Gail Carr Williams, present. And I wasn't here last month, but I know my colleague Janet Miller did a nice send-off to our board member, Mary. So we will miss her, but wish her well. So if I can have a motion for approval of the April 27th, 2023 MTA Board minutes?
Motion.
There's a motion for approval. Is there a second?
Janet Miller.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We have board minutes approved. Next on the agenda, I have public comments, and I have one card and from Darius. I know he's back there. Darius Knight. You have to add your,
Good afternoon, everybody.
he's got Brooklyn. My daughter lives in Brooklyn. She would appreciate that you're wearing her hometown. I know. Oh, I see every time I'm in Brooklyn, but okay, we sidebar again, but it's okay.
Oh, my goodness. I hope everybody's doing good. My comments today, I just kind of want to reflect on something that Katie and Zeta did with the open house this week. I thought that was an excellent move to bring in customer participation and to notify the customers of exactly what's going on and, what's being planned in the next few months. I did speak to Ms. Riggs this morning, and I told her that I felt maybe if they had someone downstairs to alert customers kind of that meeting was upstairs in the meeting room, and if they could do that on the next meeting, that would be excellent to bring in more people. Aside from that, y'all have some really hardworking supervision staff, and I don't think they get enough credit. There's a lot of issues that's been happening down at Central, good, bad, and the other. I don't know how to really put this to you all. I want to make this board aware that if you all can find the time, please take the time to speak to the supervision staff that work at Central. Sometimes when you work somewhere, you can't say what you really want to say because that could be your job. And I'm looking at all of you all in this moment, and I'm literally coming to you saying this because there are things that are happening that need to be addressed. And I am just one person. I can only tell you so much. I can only send so many emails, videos, and pictures to the staff. And I am asking you all to please, I know that you all do a lot for the community, but I'm asking you all to please take the time out of your schedule within the next few months. Speak to these supervisors and speak to these bus operators. To the other staff, to the trainers who may be watching and listening, we know that you do a very, very hard job in training bus operators how to drive the buses. But we do need a better focus between safety and training. I think that safety could do some things to help out in that department because there's an issue with some new bus operators. They're learning. And, it's difficult for them to adjust. It's not so much their on the road performance, but it's in Central. We cannot afford to spend $500,000 to $600,000 for each bus for them to be wrecked and only have had them for a month. That's not a good look. And if we continue this pattern, we're not going to be able to move forward with fall service changes. Because if we don't have enough buses in house, how will we do that? Operations is struggling at times to keep 40-foot and 60-foot buses on the road, so they're having to place access ride vans. I've asked for them to do a better job of doing it. It hasn't really changed much, but I know Miss Carolyn in operations is doing what she can, but there are still some issues in dispatch. But your support staff is driving around in the vehicles holding their cell phone and on the cell phone. I've reported that a month ago and never got a calm response back. So I've been having some issues in that quality and control department that I've actually had to address to customer service staff, and they have went out of their way to address these issues and even forward them to Miss Monica, and even Miss Monica herself has had to reach out to that department. Honestly, she should not have to do that. Those other staff members should not have to do that. But I want to say this before I walk away. Miss Katie does an excellent job, and I know my time is short. But I want you all to give her the acknowledgments, her and Miss Riggs, because I constantly tell Miss Riggs she does too much. She is always working. So if you would, please acknowledge Miss Zeta Riggs and Katie Freudberg, because they do excellent work here at this agency. And it would be terrible for me not to address how hard they work here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knight. I appreciate the comments. Does anyone else wish to make a public comment? Is there anyone else here who wishes to make a public comment? Hearing none, seeing no hands, seeing no one approach the mic, I will close the public comments portion of our agenda. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda we have 4 information-only items. And I would ask my fellow board members if any of those information items that you would like pulled out for discussion.
Yes, please,
Yes.
if I may.
Sure.
I just want to, I guess, make a comment, or could I get, maybe Steve, could you tell us about the mayor's proposed budget? Because I feel like it's an encouraging one, and I want to hear more about it.
If I'm being here.
Certainly. Yeah, I think we definitely got a really positive proposal from the mayor. It's obviously working its way through the process. In fact, in my report, I'll talk some about our council budget hearing the other night. But essentially, we had a pretty significant baseline service request. That was up around $10 million of increase. And that was to cover, first of all, like most of the Metro Department, well, all of the Metro Departments were facing the same kinds of inflation that everybody is. But that also covers things like full year operation of services we started last year, where we would have been partially funded in the last fiscal year. It covers, for instance, with the great work that our engineering construction folks are doing, getting new bus shelters up. That means our shelter maintenance crews need to be expanded. So the baseline budget request will allow us to put on another shelter maintenance crew. And it includes partial year funding for the operation of the Dr. Ernest Patton North Nashville Transit Center, which will be opening in the spring. So the baseline, is super positive. It means stable service for sure, stable fares in the upcoming year. And then of our investment request, we asked for about $5.5 million. We got a little bit less than half of that. So that does mean that we'll be able to continue the better bus service expansion, maybe not, quite as much as we would have wanted to. But certainly to the comments that Mr. Knight made, we're going to be proposing some service expansion, some additional service in the fall. And then again in the spring, we're going to have to kind of circle back and see what that package can be. But a lot of that will be centering around the opening of that facility. So very positive, momentum. Wasn't everything we asked for, but I guess, I'm sort of a glass is half empty and half full at the same time person. If we had been offered everything we asked for, I probably would have said, well, damn, we didn't ask for enough.
Thank you. I think that's really encouraging, and I like hearing that we were fully funded at that baseline request. That's really great. And we also got a really great capital spending plan.
Yeah, one of the proposed allocations on the capital side is, I think as everybody's aware, we have in the long-range plan to advance some form of high-capacity transit along Murfreesboro Pike, and we keep talking about how much that route's exploding and, the traffic levels there, and it's an airport connection, and the rapid growth in southeast Nashville and connecting to, our planned Hickory Hollow Transit Center. So one of the proposed allocations would be $15 million to continue to advance planning, engineering, environmental review of that project. And I know I was quoted accurately, by the way, in the Nashville Business Journal as saying if that appropriation does come through, that could easily cut 2 years off the project development process.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
So far so good, but it still has to be adopted.
I would urge you all to take some time and read those information only items. And if you have any specific questions, to reach out to the staff that was responsible for the report. And so also on the consent agenda item, we have one item on the consent agenda, which is the State We Go Ride contract renewal. Is there any request by any board members to pull that outside for discussion? If not, I would ask for approval of the consent agenda item.
So moved, Janet.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second is Jessica.
I'm still
Any-
doing my Zoom thing where I say my name.
It's okay. I don't know why I'm just. Any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have a consent agenda. With that, Mr. Searcy, I will turn this over to you for Operations and Finance Committee.
Well, it's going to be easy enough to welcome Mr. Knight's heroine to the microphone. Ms. Freyberg, please.
We get that wonderful opportunity to thank her.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Darius must want something in fall service changes. But that's okay. Today we'll be reviewing the quarterly performance report for January through March 2023. Once again, despite a few days of winter weather, which seems like a really long time ago now, ridership was at almost 90% of pre-COVID levels. Several routes, including, the 23 Dickerson Road, 52 Nolensville, 55 Murfreesboro, and the number 8 8th Avenue were over pre-COVID ridership. And another 4 were over 90%. You'll notice that the Route 8, 8th Avenue South, which is a local route, has the second highest productivity in our system right now. As part of the Better Bus Plan, and also just in response to this ridership growth, we are proposing to add service to this route in the fall. So improving from every 40 minutes to every 30 minutes on weekdays and Saturdays, and then from hourly to every 40 minutes on Sundays. And we hope that that will help support the current ridership growth as well as encourage more. But even if ridership doesn't grow, this route will probably still be in the top 3 in terms of productivity after those improvements. So you can expect to see additional service improvement requests on this in the next few system changes. Another proposed change for this fall is the extension of the frequent corridors until 1:15 a.m., Monday through Saturday. We started operating until 12:15 a.m. in October 2021. Prior to that, we operated until 11:15 p.m. The first quarter that we operated that service, ridership on that service after midnight was about 2,600 that quarter. This immediate past quarter, that had more than doubled to over 5,000 passengers, which is still a fairly small percentage of our overall ridership. But it's significant in a few ways. Number one, just in terms of the growth that we continue to see there. We know that this is it's vital access to jobs that people couldn't get to before, as well as to entertainment. And then it also likely represents added ridership at other times of day. So it's the second half of a round trip that you couldn't have previously made because you couldn't get home. And it's also contributing to ridership earlier in the day, we think, because our overall ridership in that time has gone up 30%. but our ridership in the 10 and 11 p.m. hours has gone up 80%. And so we think that some of that is because people know that they can make plans. They can plan to go home at 10 or 11, and then if if their concert runs over, if they have to work overtime, if their plans just change, they know that they can still, that they're confident they can have access to transit to get home still. That confidence is somewhat limited still by our reliability downtown. We don't have a lot of traffic anywhere else in our system at midnight, which is great, and I hope we don't, but we do have traffic downtown at midnight. There's kind of a morning rush hour, an afternoon rush hour, and then an overnight rush hour. Just as an example, the convention center on 4th Avenue is our busiest stop outside of Central. It has somewhere between 500 and 700 boardings a day. And it's about 3,000 feet south of Central. The last bus leaves Central at 12:15 a.m. Going south. So those 3,000 feet, typically, if there's nothing special happening, take between 3 and 6 minutes. So far this month, we've had 8 days, just this month of May, we've had 8 days where that trip has taken 15 or more minutes longer than that, including some where it was over 30 past that. Some of these delays are on 4th, some are waiting for transfers from other routes that are caught elsewhere downtown. These delays are frustrating for people, but also because we have such limited service late at night, it makes it difficult for people to feel confident using our service late at night. It generates anxiety as to whether they've maybe missed the last bus home and are going to be stranded until we start up at 5 in the morning. And it also raises concerns about safety waiting for an extended period of time, especially for people who may be getting off work late or being paid in cash, waiting downtown past midnight for substantially longer than they expected. So as we continue to extend service later in the fall, figuring out how to address that reliability will be a key to making sure that customers feel safe and confident using that service that we're adding late at night. And Felix and Marty will be touching more on that later today. And that concludes my report, unless you have any questions.
I have a question. Is there any way to, probably not, but is there any way to tell what percentage of these people are the tourists or the partiers and what percentage of them are the workers? Sure you can look at them and tell. Taylor Swift night, you would be very certain who would.
We do have some
Workers
destination
don't wear
data that helps approximate that. Anecdotally, and from what I've seen, a lot of them are hotel, hospitality, and cafeteria workers. I did actually try to pull Easy Ride data to see if I could get anything substantial out of that, but not enough of them are on We Go Ride yet for it to be
It's interesting. It's just kind of an interesting phenomenon,
It is, yeah.
Janet, the overall, Katie alluded to the origin destination survey, and I know in the coming months, Felix's group is going to do an overview for the board of what the outcome was, but that's a really comprehensive survey we do from time to time. And one of the questions are you from Nashville or you're a visitor? And just under 10% said they were visitors, and just over 90% are from Nashville.
Interesting. Thank you.
Any other questions?
We got to figure this downtown thing out, so.
I guess you all will come. No pressure for
Get
you
ready,
all in a little
Felix.
bit. We're going to spare Katie all those
Marty
questions.
may wish he had been later.
Katie, how much pressure are we getting for 24-hour service?
I would say that there's a fair amount of demand for it. And a lot of what, and Steve may be able to speak to this better. The first thing that a supervisor, when I said we were looking to extend service till 1:15 a.m. in the fall, the first thing that somebody said to me was, that's great. We have people who are going to work at Vanderbilt, and right now they ride the midnight bus so that they're only 4 hours early, and now they only have to go to work 3 hours early. So that kind of answers the question for me.
And not to steal any of Felix and Marty's thunder, but in the outreach on the Connect Downtown stuff, that's been one of the things that frankly, a lot of downtown employers are, yeah, we would participate, we go ride, but you can only get us halfway there.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was a great report.
Thank you.
We appreciate you, Katie. We
you, I
appreciate you very much.
Thank you.
But you know that.
Oh, Carl's not here. Okay.
Good afternoon, board members. Thank you, Chair. Carl's not here with us today, but I'm going to bring Yul Krieger up to the podium to walk you through this item for you.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Real short and sweet, hopefully. We put out an RFP to get bids and proposals on remanufacturing 10 to 15 of our older access ride vehicles that we can no longer support. We're limited on parts, and their useful life was started out as 5 years. Now we're running them 9 and 10 years, and we can no longer keep up with the repairs of them. So we did the RFP, and we came out with the selected vendor. We got the baseline quote at $95,167.50 to remanufacture. That includes engine, transmission, brakes, suspension, steering components, flooring panels, seat replacement. We're going to try to make these 9 and 10-year-old vehicles look more towards where they were when we first got them. We don't expect or foresee the next order of access ride vehicles coming in until the latter part of 2024, and we need these vehicles placed back in service. So to sum it up, the final paragraph on the page was the staff requests the board authorize the CEO to enter into a contract with Southern Bus and Mobility for remanufacturing up to 14 Glavall shuttle buses at a maximum total value of $1.1 million. The contract shall be a term for 4 years with an additional 1-year extension to incorporate necessary warranty provisions.
Yul, should that be 15 instead of 14?
Beg your pardon?
Should the 14 in that recommendation be 15? Because it refers to 15 earlier.
Well,
It's going to basically depend on how much each one of the vehicles are going to be. So we're going to send out these vehicles and they're going to get a quote based on
Okay.
each one. So
Okay, then you want to amend that to 15.
Queries? Any additional questions?
After you do this, how much more life will be in, or does
we're
it,
planning on 2 years minimum,
2 years? Okay.
to
For
extend them
each-
2 more years.
For each vehicle?
Correct.
Okay.
Having ridden on enough of these older vehicles, I should abstain.
No, you shouldn't.
But it's good to hear that we're going to give them some new life.
Right.
Some of them, it's approaches a lack of credulity, though, to believe that they can be rehabbed. But we're willing to give you your best opportunity.
Make the effort. Thank you.
I think you would agree, Walter, that he's taking the best of the worst to be remanufactured. The worst of the worst
Solid
are
point.
gonna be.
Yeah. That must be what I've been riding. That's right.
And for the record, any of the public that are watching, we do not give preferential treatment to board members in the vehicle
Absolutely not.
selection process.
I can testify. Well, you heard the recommendation. And the committee accepts the recommendation and asks the board for its consideration.
Are there any questions? If so, can I have a motion for adopting the recommendation of the staff? Is that a motion?
Yes.
Okay, it's a motion. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
There is a motion, there's a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, then I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposition. We have new, almost refurbished Glavel shuttle buses.
Thank you.
I hope you get to ride one of the very first remodeled ones, Walter. Or,
Well, I've ridden one of the new ones.
okay, and that's what you really want to stay on.
No, if we can rehab the old ones, the new ones have their own issues. We'll talk about that later. Yeah.
Mr. Searcy, anything else for your report?
No, as a matter of fact, I am more than happy to return the virtual gavel back to the real one, the live one.
Thank you, Mr. Searcy. It was a good report, a lot of good information there. Ms. Miller, I'm going to turn it over to you for new initiatives and community engagement committee.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. We have two really interesting things to talk about today. The first is we're going to get an update on our advertising program. And I know Steve and I visited about this earlier this week, and I think there's a real place for discussion, kind of directionally what we want to do. And so we're really looking forward to that. I understand, Rick, you're doing a great job, particularly on the partnership piece of it, which is great. So we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to talk about the Connect Downtown study, which we all know is so important. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Rick Rodriguez to present our advertising overview, and then we'll have a discussion.
Thank you all, and thank you, Madam Chair, for having me. Let me just get situated here if I can. So today, we are going to discuss the future of advertising on our assets. So a little background for context is that in 2018, this body participated in discussion to evaluate how we balance revenue with brand equity on our advertising efforts. And some of the discussion centered around restricting advertising types or capping asset availability, even seeking additional opportunities to advertise. And a summary of those board-directed changes as a result of that discussion were: one, full wrap buses were capped at 25 per month. Full wraps only on buses, reducing coverage on the windows for safety reasons, the elimination of the partial ads that were appearing on our buses as well, and articulated buses were added to the available fleet. On this next slide, I wanted to point out something that was interesting. It's a visual presentation on the evolution of our bus advertising. If you notice on the top image, it was the start of all of that, where it was the white buses with the partial signage. Then it evolved into the full wrapped buses. And then ultimately what you see most of today are the branded buses. So we've come a long way, and it's something really to be proud of when you see change happening in a positive direction that way. So our current advertising policies, just to reconfirm them here, no public issue advertisements are allowed. No political advertisements are allowed. No tobacco advertisements. Alcohol allowed with limitations on messaging. Advertising's allowed for PSAs, and also by Metro resolution, a percentage of assets made available to Metro entities so that they can advertise. Now, the relationship with the current contractor began in 2013. We awarded them a 5-year agreement to advertise on our assets. And they also exercised the one-time option to extend for an additional 5 years. And the agreement officially comes to an end September 30th of this year, officially. And although the contractor has really done a fine job for us and has been exceptional in every way, the fact that the contract comes to an end gives us an opportunity to reassess what we'd like to do going forward. So in addition to the advertising on our buses, there's been another evolution, the evolution with our partnerships. And partnerships help us to cross-promote on our communication channels. They create transit advocates. They build image as we go being a community partner. And it also helps us to meet the requirements under Metro's resolution. So 2 quick examples on the partnerships. One was with the Tennessean, where we wrapped a bus for them, and they agreed to provide us with free advertising. The second was the WeGo-cation program, and we partnered with local attractions with that one. The Nashville Zoo being one of them. After we've wrapped their bus, they agreed to offer half-off entrance to all quick ticket holders. They also promoted us on their comms channels. So with the program and all of those attractions, in that program, we netted 120,000 reach per month. That's 120,000 extra people seeing the WeGo messaging over that time. So we thought that was a great marketing campaign, and it netted us not just the great results, but new transit advocates. On this slide, we're going to take a look at something new. We're going to take a look at the advertising revenues that we received and what asset they were directed to. As you'll see from the slide, the majority, a lion's share of the revenues are being directed to bus advertising, 63%. 18% are being directed to shelter ads. 19% are being directed to the bench ads. Now we receive about $500,000 in net advertising dollars. Now this is not truly net revenue, as we have additional expenses related to the program. That includes the labor to install or remove those ads, administrative support, and on occasion, as Margaret can attest to, occasionally we have to seek her legal advice on an interpretation of an ad. So it does not take that into consideration. And even if we removed those considerations, the advertising revenue makes up just 0.5% of our overall budget. There's something to think about. In doing so, we vetted options for advertising and identified 4 possible scenarios of which we would love more discussion on. So I will go through them now. Option number 1 is to continue advertising as is without any changes. This would maximize gross revenues. We would go out to bid as we always have. And we would receive revenues as we have in the past. The cons is that the option 1 would reduce control over our brand image. There's still rider confusion with the proliferation of party buses. I'll go into this statement in a later slide. There's also increased potential for controversial ads that are associated with WeGo. Option number 2 is to discontinue the outside advertising altogether. In other words, we would discontinue the advertising contract and only install our WeGo messaging, WeGo promotions, and so forth. The pros there is that we maximize control over our assets and image, We improve the overall appearance of the fleet. We free up staff to focus on these transit-related jobs. The cons are that we would eliminate revenue completely, as we would no longer have that revenue source. And there's also potential for controversy associated with reduced revenue. Option number 3 is a new approach. It's called a hybrid approach. In this approach, we would still retain outside contractor, but with additional requirements on the campaign, perhaps limiting more the number of buses they could wrap, limiting the number of advertisers that can have ads or market segments that can have ads, so that where there's not a lion's share of ads all in one market segment. So the pros would be we would retain some outside revenue, most likely less than the current levels. We would also have an opportunity for new firms to respond with new and creative approaches that we have not done in the past or even considered. The cons are the same as option 1, but to a lesser degree. We would also reduce advertising revenues, and it may limit the number of bidders or contractors who would be willing to respond. Now, this is option 4 and the last for your consideration. This is where we would consider transitioning to a full community impact partner model. In other words, package some of our partner promotions, bunches and shelters, ads, in combination with an overall partnership package, and that can include We Go Ride. We've been successful in that arena, or service improvements or service trades. So the pros are that we retain outside advertising revenue, likely less than the current models. We would improve appearance of fleet and facilities. We would provide more control over assets. There's also a potential to generate associated revenue through the partnership efforts like We Go Ride, service guarantees. The cons being better. The cons being a greater level of staff effort for sales and also reduction in advertising revenues. On this next slide, it's going to be interesting to see, so I wanted everyone to pay close attention to it. It refers to option number 1 in what I mentioned in the con category. Whose bus is it? Some We Go, some party bus. It's hard to tell unless you are trained in this industry and you work in the industry, but other than
No,
that.
I couldn't tell the difference.
Maybe we can grow ridership by becoming the upstage party bus.
Yeah. It's definitely an interesting thing to
Party in
look
purple.
at.
Well, we could party on our buses as well, but maybe
Not that
consistent
way.
with the We Go mission.
Yes. Or create a party division, perhaps.
Just, aligned with mission.
Yes,
People can be happy
yes.
on We Go.
So on this last slide, our desire is to determine the model that makes the most sense for us now to continue to position the brand, enhance the image while generating revenues, building our impact partner programs, continuing to increase that brand awareness as we all do, and collaborate more potentially, should this group choose that route, with an advertising vendor to promote the brand and develop partners, and ultimately, bottom line, all of our goals here and the reason why we are here is to increase riders. So my TED Talk today was simply to give you context on the program, give an overview of those board-directed changes a few years ago, and also see how we would like to proceed when the current current agreement expires in September. So with that, I want to thank you all personally for your time. Also thank Katie and Zita for doing a wonderful job at WeGo.
Mr. Knight, you are a high impact today.
But now I'd love feedback and suggestions, and I have a pen in hand if I need to.
Great. So we need to have a conversation today about this. What I also want to say is Renushka has done an extraordinary job leading the overall efforts and the partnership. I mean, every time I walk through Green Hills Mall and see the WeGo thing, I'm like, this is great. This is how it should work. So I have a pretty strong opinion on this, but I'm going to withhold it and hear from each of you. I am hopeful here. So Walter, you go first.
I'm really interested in these partnerships, particularly those where we're swapping service, not so much revenue builders, but image builders and projecting the service out into the broader community. Every time I hear the traffic report on WPLN being brought to you by WeGo, I don't know what the impact of that is.
Hopefully they're
But it
saying just the
gets-
traffic report, not the traffic.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, it's definitely in our bailiwick. And there are obviously other opportunities like that we have yet to exploit. So I'd like to see us really focus on that.
Great ideas, great suggestions. Thank you.
Jessica, how about you?
Yeah, I would just echo what Walter's talked about in terms of building that community and building that impact in the community. Bus riders build their own community on the bus, but it's really great to be sharing that with other high impact cultural community builders in Nashville.
Excellent.
This may not be as long a conversation as I thought. Gail, how about you?
A couple things. One, I loved like the zoo and the First Art Museum. And when we made that kind of connection, I thought it was great. But I know Margaret's going to chime in and say, even if we do that, we need to make certain that we come up with policy as to who do we partner with, what do those partners look like. And again, once again, we have to live under a policy of what we put on the bus if we go that route. The other piece, and maybe it's a conversation for you all to get together with Ed on, what are we going to do when we lose that 0.1% of 1% of our revenue, and where was it going and where does it go to now? And we had that conversation a long time ago when we first did the rebrand about that. So again, how do we either say we okay with not having it, or we find another source of revenue? And maybe rent a party bus and run it and create revenue. I don't really know, but in any event, more seriously, how do we bring that revenue? How do we not lose it, but how do we become creative and innovative? And since this is just the word of Nashville, entrepreneurial enough to sort of come up with a way to make up for that revenue. Because I do have I love not having maybe advertising because I love the purple, favorite color. But at the same time, I also recognize that we need revenue. So I'll just sort of throw that out there. But I do think that this warrants even more discussion and more back and forth. And it could be one of our monthly discussions but we need to do it sooner than later because this is up for September kind of thing. But I like all four. I like to digest them just a little bit more. But I am a little concerned about the revenue piece. And even if we do partnerships, what that policy looks like about who we partner with and what are the terms of that partnership. Is that what you would say, Margaret?
Probably want to say a little more, but Janet, you go ahead and then I'll.
Okay, she'll shoot me down. I think that our buses are the brand of WeGo. I just think they are. And I've been paying a lot of attention to this since we first talked about it. And if our goal long-term is to grow riderships, improve the brand, improve the image, then I think option one of staying the same just has to go off the table. Because I think we would all agree that it's not helping the brand to have just a mishmash of advertisers, and particularly those full wraps, because it makes no sense. It's like there's a blue bus with two, whatever. And I think the beautiful purple buses on their own is nirvana, but that's not the world we live in. But when I see the bus go by, I love John Drake, who runs Metro Police. Whenever I see John Drake go by on the bus with all the police recruiting, I'm like, that is a great use of the bus, because it's helping our police department, it's helping the city, it's helping the community, it's helping the image of WeGo, it's helping the image of the police department. So when you look at the partnerships, to me, that's super interesting. Also, the fact that it's a two-way street on these partnerships, right? So we're getting half off benefit for our riders at the zoo. And I mean, it's just a value given for the riders, which I think we all need to keep the riders first. I told you I had a lot of opinions on this. And the last thing I would say is I do agree that, the 500,000 is a number that we don't want to just say, make it go away. I don't think that will happen if we do this well. And if it goes down to 350 or something, I'm just making this up, to me, $150,000 investment in our brand in a community where we are trying to grow choice riders is just stick it as a marketing line item, and it is in full support of our marketing objectives. So I do think we should try to figure out how to replace it. But to me, the pros and cons are so strongly in support the brand, help promote the mission, and help community partners in two-way partnerships, that I am really firmly in option number
4.
4. I like 4. So, okay, Margaret, tell me why 4 is bad.
Oh, I don't think it's bad. In fact, there's a lot of litigation going on right now in this area. And
Not with us. But
No.
Good to know.
It's just to be clear.
And really, for that reason, I just want to say there's something in the packet that mentions over the years, that we've turned down some advertisements due to social positions, and that's not accurate. So I just want to make sure that's on the record here in case we get ourselves into position. But I will say that it is a very, very difficult issue when you decide to advertise about what is viewpoint neutral in the law. And so that is an important thing to have in here. I just want to tweak how it was written. The thing about these community partnerships is, once again, what is community? It's what Gail is going to. And, the government can advertise and on the bus, and there's no question about that, so that the police recruits, you are clearly speaking as the government on the bus. But when you advertise for other community nonprofits or whatever, that could be an issue for MTA too. So keep in mind, hearing what you have to say, obviously, we will take this back and we've heard you, and we will do what we can to address, what you would like to see happen. But I have to say there are some things that the law has said is okay, and there are things that you can't get a good answer on.
Can you give an example of one, Margaret?
Yeah, so our policy right now says that we're viewpoint neutral, so you're not espousing a particular viewpoint, and our ads are to say the advantage of a product, a good and service. In other words, it's a commercial goods or services, you're selling something. But you can't sell, we're not going to sell tobacco. We have a lot of children on the bus, and we're doing alcohol in certain circumstances. And that political advertising is not the goods and services we're talking about. But we have on our policy that you won't do political ads or political campaign ads. That was okay when we passed the policy in 2018, but now the courts are saying political is too vague. Because, what is political? And then there are questions like, what is, community that benefits the community? What does that mean? That's too vague. And so essentially what's happening is what you want to do is you want to be a service, and we say this in our policy, that we are a non-public forum. That means that there's no First Amendment right to say whatever you want to on our buses. So in order to be a non-public forum, we need to be very specific and be objective about what can be on our bus. And so like recently, there was a Detroit case that had and I think it was Detroit, where a bus, the transit agency declined an ad that disparaged Muslims, according to their policy. And the court found that you can't promote people on the bus, but not disparage people on the bus. I mean, is that think about this. Well, whatever the circuit is in Detroit, somebody who knows, no, it wasn't six, but the Sixth Circuit recently ruled about these are federal circuits. They're taking up the First Amendment right in their federal circuits. The Sixth Circuit rendered a decision about the political and that being vague. So, we're going to have to change the policy. No matter what you do, okay? We're going to have a discussion about the policy. So I think this is a really good discussion for you all to have. To what direction do you want to go? Because as you know, if you do get sued about your policy, the attorney fee is another. We haven't been, thank goodness, but that would take the revenue that you're talking about. So it's a hard question. I mean, transit agencies are dealing with it all over the country, and the courts will tell you they know they're not giving a whole lot of guidance in the opinion. They'll say every case will be fact specific. So all I can do is the best you can do with the policy.
So Margaret, how do you define a partnership?
Well, the easy way to do it would just have it always be the government speaking. Do you see what I'm saying?
Right.
But what to do with nonprofits that aren't the government will take some thinking.
Right, so think about the zoo, right? That was a partnership that was an exchange to promote both entities. And there was a benefit given
Right.
by both.
Right. So what you were talking about in your discussion about increased ridership and, the purpose of your policy is to do certain things. I think we could write that in there, all these purposes. We have some good purposes in there already, strengthen that. And then, but we would need to give Rick and Renuka, some real objective ways of looking at each of these things. If it's this,
Right.
and have them have a tool so that they can give that to the advertiser agency. And if there is one, or if it's in-house, given whatever your decision is, each time they have a decision, they, having some training and some objectivity about doing that. I don't know that.
There's also a risk-reward question here, right? So the question is it worth the risk to move to a new policy? Whereas the least risk is to give up 500,000, or at least give up the bus portion of the 500. You can keep the stops at whatever standard, but only the buses are all purple, and would that be a choice?
Well, I still think that, and I know Steve's dying to talk, I can feel it next to me, and we do want to hear what he
I
has
feel
to say.
strongly both ways.
Yeah, I still think there is a lot of opportunity on the partnership for what you were talking about with Chief Drake and with our government partners. There's so much opportunity for the government speaking. I mean, I felt good when I saw that we were recruiting bus drivers on the bus.
Right, yes.
So we can use the buses to promote MTA and governmental agencies and speak
when you
as
get
the
into
government.
Private entities.
It's when you get outside of that. So that can be done. And so what I think you're asking us to do is look at those other aspects of the community and how we can promote ridership, or we promote a specific company that does Easy Ride or whatever it is. Yeah, exactly.
All right,
You know.
let's hear from Steve, and then I want to go back around. Oh, hi, Ed. How are you? I didn't
I'm
see you.
fine, thank
Good to
you.
see you.
I think it's important for you to have all the information. Steve and I were anticipating this kind of conversation, and he already knew the sentiments. And the proposed budget only has, we cut it 200,000, and it only has 300,000 in the proposed budget now for advertising. So I thought that was important for you to know. So.
Good. Even better. Thank you, Ed. Steve.
I mean, I'd just share a couple observations. First, on the revenue side, and Margaret and I have had this conversation. One lawsuit will wipe out 3 years of that revenue. And there's nothing, and believe me, in prior lives, I've been involved in those lawsuits. They're ugly, they're public, they're expensive, and they have zero to do with the mission of this organization. So that would be one. I have a little bit too much experience. Second, with respect to the revenue, first I'm going to give shout outs to Katie and Zeta. But
There'll
then,
be a parade for them following.
but then I'm going to give shout outs to Rick and Renuka. In the time he's been here, Rick has more than doubled our We Go Ride participation. The guy can sell transit. Okay, so I have every confidence when he has another arrow in his quiver. Are we going to make up all the revenue? Maybe not. But I think we're going to make up a good bit. I'll come back to something Janet said about the walking through the Green Hills Mall. That was a very deliberate partnership that Renuka and Rick crafted in conjunction with the opening of the Hillsborough Transit Center. So in my mind, I wouldn't go too crazy about setting constraints on the partnership program. I would tie it to our annual marketing program. And if we're saying in the upcoming year, we need to promote the opening of the North Nashville, great, what are the partnerships we can develop up there to, build that? And I know that that's something that Renuka and Kia and Rachel, and everybody in the gang working on that project are actively doing. And if Ed Oliphant can't find $300,000 in the sofa cushions,
That was going to be my other comment. I failed to make that comment. So
I think that might have been a threat. I'm not sure.
I'll be honest, some of my concern is, and I know people like Rick and Renuka and Margaret who have to deal with me most often when an advertising issue comes up. And I'm like, this isn't the tail wagging the dog. This is the wing on the flea on the tail wagging the dog.
correct.
So every advertising vendor I've ever met with in my career, when they do their meet and greets with the new CEO, I said, the less I hear from you, the better. All I want is a check every month. I don't want a phone call. I don't want an email. I certainly don't want a lawsuit. It's the wing on the flea, on the tail, on the dog, and again, and if we had the capability to net out what we actually spend on the program, how much time, Yule, do we have to take buses out of service to have them wrapped or have ads put on? How much effort are we spending putting signs up and taking them down off of shelters? And my question would be, well, geez, if this is so central to our mission, why aren't we selling advertising on school buses? Why aren't we selling it on police cars, fire trucks? And I do think it opens up, this board adopted, as did the RTA board, our unsolicited proposals policy. So if somebody wants to come up with some creative way, we can entertain that, and now to some extent, we're bound by the confines of, well, no, wait a minute, if that's advertising, are we allowed to do that? Because we've already got people under contract to do that. So not that I feel strongly on any of this,
Well,
but I felt much less strongly about it than when we brought Rick on board, and he's been knocking it out of the park. So no challenge, Rick, but
the other thing that I will say is, as much as I love like the police bus, I still, when I'm going by them, it doesn't feel like it's totally safe. I mean, it just seems like your visibility into the bus. And so even though we've limited the amount of window coverage, that still bothers me. And I just think brand, what's right for the customer, and safety should be our priorities here, and not a very small amount of money. So any other comments or?
Small amount of money being the wing of the flea or the tail of the dog.
You're
That
mixing,
is an image.
you're mixing.
I practiced that.
So,
I rehearsed it in front of the mirror last night.
okay, so why don't we do this? We need to make this decision before September, right? Because we've got to figure out this vendor contract. Why don't we go back, figure out what we want the team to bring answers on, and let Margaret do her magic and figure out kind of where our legal issues are? And can we take it back up in July, or is everybody so clear on this that
Is
we're-
July, do you need it sooner than July for you to tell the?
Well, to be honest, even today, if we wanted to rebid the contract, we're not going to have time to, we have to work on extensions and things like that. So it's really whatever time frame you all would like to.
So it comes down to what I'm hearing, and tell me if I'm right, is we're either pro no advertising and free up time and headache and resource and preserve this beautiful brand, or trying to figure out the legal route for the partnership and government promotion model. Is that what I'm hearing?
The latter. More.
Yes.
More so. Yeah.
Let me say that even if you don't have an advertising policy, you can still promote MTA with no policy. Do you see what I'm saying? So it doesn't take a policy if it's all about promoting MTA. But I understand what you're,
Yeah,
understand.
okay.
And additional, if we could get really some real net figures, like what is it costing when you pull a bus out? That will make a difference because that won't look,
Those
if you
won't
have
be
it in.
available. Anything we do would be a proxy, so you could call it 100,000 or 150,000.
We'll come back with some kind of an estimate, because I'm just a big believer in net numbers.
Okay, then say the
You know?
cost is 100 to 150,000.
Okay, so that gets
That's
you
fine.
down to $100,000 or $150,000 net gain, which is less
Then
than,
300,
Yeah.
or 1/2% of 1%.
And the issue isn't that, it becomes money in the pocket. It means that the people who are currently spending time pulling those signs down, putting them up, are now cleaning shelters or, doing transit work and not billboard.
And then that's part of that too.
the one other
People
thing I would
resources.
add for Renuka and all is I'm always interested in what the best transit agencies in the country are doing. And if you see a peer city that you just think, man, they nailed it. I mean, reinventing the wheel's never a good idea. So if we could get a little bit of data on maybe some peer agencies, that could be helpful. So,
Most, and I'm not going to call out any names, I've been in a number of cities whose fleets really look like garbage. I think this board, to its credit, back in 2018 said, you know what, we need to reclaim our turf, for lack of a better word. Now, on the other hand, I was just down at the APTA CEO in Houston. Not that this was top of mind or anything, Margaret. Not one ad on any bus or train that wasn't for their system.
Yeah.
Now, they had some signage promoting their app. They had some signage saying, come work for us.
Yeah.
But not one, and that's a fleet of probably a couple thousand buses.
well, let me tell you, the value of the asset is enormous because those things are all over town. So think about what we could do to build the brand just by controlling our own asset, right? So,
And I also look at the leverage, with all of what Rick's been able to do with the WeGo ride. Is this something to help somebody who's on the edge of getting in or not? Well, if we worked with, and we're approaching those, Rick talked some about service guarantees. Well, can you put money toward, here's service we would like to do, we can't quite get over the hump. Can you put money toward that? And this sort of becomes the kicker. Green Hills Mall, I mean, my God, in the span of 3 years, they went from being one of our biggest haters to being one of our biggest supporters, and some of it had to do with the transit center, but a lot of it had to do with the dialogue, that came out of that partnership.
okay, well, we want to move along because we want to tear into the downtown presenters next. So, so if we can just do that, and we'll come back in July or whenever you figure out is the right time. But I think you've gotten a good, pretty strong direction here. So,
Absolutely.
all
Thank
right,
you.
thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
Renuka,
Good
you're doing a
job.
great job.
And as our next speakers come up, I just want to say that, Carl Dean, I saw you on TV. I was flipping channels and saw the commercial. It was very well done. And I was like, hey, that's us on TV. It's sort of like, I felt like it was family. Like, oh, some member of my family's on TV, but it was, I don't look at a lot of TV, but I just so happened to be flipping, and there you all were. So I just want to say, well done. Renuka, great job with getting that done, and it was cool. I was like screaming. Like, huh?
Gail's your
But
biggest
anyhow,
fan.
it was a very proud moment, though. Great job.
Okay, now we're going to hand it over to Felix, and we're excited to have Marty Sewell with our NDOT, NDOT, I always get them confused, here to talk about the Connect Downtown study. And from previous comments at this meeting, it's really important because buses are getting hung up on Broadway. So,
Absolutely, big
yeah.
big part of why we're here. Thank you. Good afternoon. Good to see you all. We have Marty Sewell. He's the Transportation Planning Director for the Nashville Department of Transportation and Intermodal Infrastructure, NDOT. So if you recall we were here before you last December, and we gave you an update on where we were at the time. And there's a lot that has happened since then. And the team has done an excellent job because these are not easy conversations. There's a lot of different uses. There's a lot of different stakeholders. And on one hand, the good news is that most of everybody thinks that we should do something different. On the other hand, everybody has an opinion of what that is. And it's very different. And there's been a lot of different conversations, one-on-one meetings with stakeholders. Some of those conversations have been very animated. It's been fun and not so fun to be in some of those. But it's part of what we have to do, and understanding that there's no way that we're going to please everybody. So Marty has been graceful to be here today and give you an update where we are, and specifically we want to highlight some of the key things that we're looking with some of those solutions, especially transit. Last time we were here, we had like 10 or 12 different corridors that we were looking at for transit priority. So there's been a lot of work doing some streamlining of that. So with that said, thank you so much for having us, and also thank you to Katie and Zita for allowing us to make the work easy for us today. So I'll turn it over to Marty.
This is the, yeah, all right. All right, good afternoon, board members. Thank you for the opportunity for this update today. And I'm going to do my best to follow my notes. It's not my normal practice. I try to remember everything, but this is important, and I want to make sure that I don't skip anything that would be important to you. And, this is the 10-year action plan to improve mobility in downtown. And as Felix said, I always forget to tell people who I am. I just assume, for some reason, I don't know why, that they would know. But I'm, again, Marty Sewell from NDOT. And we do go by NDOT, so we don't have to do the NDOT, whatever the rest is. We were I was in Denver last week for the NACCHO conference, the National Association of City Transportation Officials, and their department is the Department of Transportation Infrastructure, and they call themselves DOTI. So we could have come up with a cute name like that, I guess, but we went with NDOT instead. But I appreciate you bearing with me here as I get into the presentation. But as you'll recall, and as Felix mentioned too, from previous updates, we've been working on this study since January 2022. We're approaching completion, as you can see on the calendar there. We've wanted to touch on today some of the feedback, most recent feedback with stakeholders, and how we've been developing recommendations and how we're bringing those recommendations into a draft plan that we can present in the near future, and then also hit on what the next steps, the very next steps would be. Just starting with engagement, and as we previously reported to this board, we've engaged thousands of people via online or traditional meetings, community and pop-up events, focus groups, and so forth. And as we move to the next phase, one thing that we've noted here, and I put it on this slide, is just some of the key takeaways from that. And I'll point out 3 in particular, but we've had feedback across the board on all platforms that was consistent, generally consistent with, especially on the we have to do something. But across the board, people were pretty much in line with each other. People are ready to see the recommendations too. As you can imagine, again, we've been going since January 2022, and we've been working diligently to get through to this phase, but it just takes a while whenever you're really diving into some of these very detailed conversations that Felix mentioned. But also one of the things that's coming into play and people are really paying attention to is the impact to the greater region that this proposal would have. Even though it's a downtown plan, it has great benefit for the entire region by speeding up, in particular, our transit service. But that takes us to the, developing our draft recommendations, and part of that was what we brought to you in the previous presentations, but wanted to present this to you because this is what we're taking to the consultant team is working with this summer so that we can be ready to present a draft later in the summer. And I'll get to that in just a second. But this slide has a lot of words on it, and I'm not going to read them all, but I do want to spend a few minutes on it. Just noting that drafting the recommendations, this goes beyond just the public engagement that we've had, of course. This brings into play the technical analysis, looking at best practices, our expertise of our team, as well as just the tradition and history that has happened here in Nashville with planning and the various documents that we have to go by. But regarding technical analysis, I'll note that our modeling efforts so far have looked at overall feasibility of potential changes along individual corridors, and that's versus looking at their impact on the system as a whole. And so that's where we are right now. We'll be looking again over the summer with the consultant team at how those benefits relate across the board, not just on individual corridors. We're also looking at establishing the metrics for evaluating the recommendations and how we'll balance those with the community feedback. And for example, we'd look at the number of people that are moved in key corridors, the space provided for vulnerable travelers, the transit travel times through downtown, accessibility to jobs, vehicle miles traveled, as well as access to the curb for loading and other service activities. That takes us into the priority solutions that aren't directly related to transit, but noting that transit benefits from all of these. And that, just to keep this particular slide short, the idea of better managing, the idea that overall traffic management is going to improve transit, is an improvement for transit, as well as improving the active transportation infrastructure, the sidewalks and so forth, also supportive of transit. And also as we better organize the curb. The curbs are just not organized right now, as I'll put it mildly. And that is really one of the hardest conversations we're having, because every inch of that curb is used by somebody in downtown. And because the corridor itself, or the various corridors, are narrower than what you would see in a lot of our cities, noting Denver last week, they have these great, really wide corridors that you can do all these great things with. But we are left to deal with what we have in those narrow corridors. So all of these things work together to get us where we want, but I'll get to that in just a second. But specific to the transit infrastructure, starting with what other plans have already identified, the East Bank Transit Center. My boss, Diana, would probably get mad at me for saying it that way, the mobility centers.
You can say mobility hub, Marty. You're among friends.
The Transit Mobility Center. We've had an ongoing debate about what to call those, but of course, that's going to be at the intersection of Lafayette and 4th, and looking at how those routes from the north, northwest, northeast would be extended from Wego Central to Sobro, and provide direct service to the western and southern side of downtown. And then also, of course, the East Bank Transit Center that's proposed with Imagine East Bank, and looking at that near the intersection of James Robertson and the East Bank Boulevard that's envisioned, and really looking also as that's being implemented as part of the overall East Bank infrastructure improvements. Specific to transit infrastructure on the transit priority corridors, which is, I believe, kind of the gold in this entire project, is how we have to get to this. We have to be able to get to this level. We've looked at, as Felix said, at multiple corridors. There are others I'd love to put on here, but at this point in time, we feel like, and we're going to, after we start testing it and modeling it, we'll tweak it. But right now, we know we can start with this, and we're fairly confident that this will work. And so as we move into the next stage of modeling, we'll be able to come back next time and say, yes, we know this will work. This is a great start. And the idea here being having a west side transit priority corridor that is taking place on 8th Avenue, Rosa Parks, part of James Robertson, using the James Robertson Bridge to get to the East Bank, using the KVB and 3rd and 4th, getting back again across the river to the Sobro Transit Center, and so forth. And then, of course, the East Bank Transit Priority Corridor, that north to south section there on the East Bank, would be part of that infrastructure there, along with the stadium and with everything else that's proposed there.
Marty, can I ask a favor?
Sure.
On that last slide?
Let's go back.
Could you actually define, when you say transit priority corridor, because I think a lot of us in the business think we know what that means, but could you actually tell the board what that means.
Yeah, in this case in particular, we're speaking specifically to dedicated space for the transit vehicles. So a dedicated lane, whether it's painted red, most likely, to indicate that. Denver has several examples. Just again, I keep going back to Denver, but it's always great to, when you visit these other cities with the other transportation officials, to see how people are doing it. And then hearing about how many other cities are doing transit priority corridors. I don't have all that here, but for another day, that would be a great conversation to have as well. But the idea here of these corridors would move our buses as quickly as possible.
Would it eliminate any buses coming down Fourth, crossing Broadway?
Oh, that's exactly the question. The
Well,
third and
that's-
fourth, would it go to one way on each side because there's only 2 lanes?
Right, and bear with me 1 second.
Oh, you'll
I'll
get
to
there.
that slide.
Yeah, we got it, great mind.
We were prepared for that. I think that next slide gets to it. But just real quickly, so that I don't forget this particular one, this is showing you beyond the transit priority corridors themselves, where the corridors that would need some version or some level of priority in addition to what they have right now. So extending out, for example, I'm on the wrong page, extending out Broadway west of 8th Avenue, for example, or west of Rosa Parks, going toward West End, looking at the new East Bank Boulevard, of course, and the connection to Dickerson Pike and the service there. Also Lafayette and 4th Avenue south of the Sobro Transit Center, as well as Main Street going into East Nashville. So really getting movement toward those various places that people want to go and connect to from downtown. And so this slide, I hope, answers the question you were bringing up. And the colors, don't be confused by the colors. They're representing the area of the city that those particular routes are coming from. The purple is coming from the northeast, for example, and the others kind of go along with that. That's what those colors mean. But we'll be looking at potential reconfiguration that could be phased in over a 10-year horizon, faster if Steve wants to, and you guys are able to do it faster, of course. But that takes us to what we were talking about earlier, what Katie was hitting on earlier, the 24 hours service on the high frequent or the frequent routes, and how important that is to address the needs in downtown right now. So many people have concerns about how they get to work or where they park. That's the one that comes up the most. And it's such a great opportunity to shift that mode to something more sustainable like transit. In this case, that could really help people get there quicker. And that story earlier of someone getting to work 4 hours early, that just kind of breaks our hearts to hear that. And hopefully this would be able to address that in a very meaningful way. Let's see here. And a lot of this also, of course, builds on Better Bus with a tweak here and there, but in general, following along with that logic that was presented there. So that brings us to where we are right now, and that's taking those recommendations, testing them, layering them on top of each other so that we can begin to build the draft plan that would then come back to you and to the city council or to Metro Council for whatever approval, endorsement, whatever procedure it needs to be followed for that for your particular boards that we could bring back to. And that's layering all these on top of each other, layering the activities centers with, the transit centers.
The mobility hubs.
Or the mobility centers.
Mobility hubs.
The mobility hubs, mobility centers, mobility lanes, and the transit priority corridors, all of it on top. And of course, as we do that, you also start to see where there might be conflicts, and then working through those conflicts one by one so that we can get to a plan that we can put on the table and start discussing and get really into the discussion with the community and the stakeholders that have been waiting patiently for us to get to this point so that they can, give us whatever feedback that they can provide at that point. So that's that. Of course, we also, built into all of this is the transportation demand management and using the Nashville Connector, which we're still grateful for your support and helping us with that program. We want to take it to the next level and allow it to help lead and direct us on some of these mode shifts that are needed. And then lastly, I'm just looking at the phasing and funding considerations that we need to have as we move into having a draft plan, reminding the public that especially on these larger projects like the transit priority corridors and the loading zones, there would need to be more specific engagement with those individuals to make sure that those designs can work for everyone. So this isn't the end of the road for those kinds of projects. We'll keep working with you. We'll keep working with the community on those to move them forward. excuse me, while I've touched on some of what is required to get us to that draft plan, there are some key milestones that I want to hit on quickly, and I don't necessarily probably need to go through all of these, but the idea is we do have this path. We're getting the feedback from the community that we received on the last round. We're working to model those. We're refining individual projects based on that information. We're preparing summary document, which would be the plan itself, and then revising after the final round of engagement, and then hopefully very soon bringing that again to you all and to the Metro Council for their consideration. And then this last slide, just identifying what we're planning to do. Once we do have the draft plan, we'll start presenting it to the public. We have these things are already on the books, and there might be others as well, but we'll want to be able to present that to as many people as possible and get as much feedback as we can so that we get to the next step and we know that we've got a plan that everyone can live with. So with that, that closes out my presentation, but we're, again, thankful for the opportunity to present today and look forward to answering any questions or concerns that you might have.
Gail's dying to push her button and ask a question. Go ahead, Ms. Gail.
So, Marty, great job, and I know so much work is going into this, and Felix, thanks for working so much with NDOT. And but so the low-hanging fruit, the hard-working, great Katie work, where she talks about people can't get to
And
work.
Zeta.
And Zeta's not here today, but Zeta's been, yeah. So.
Sorry.
That's okay. Now I gotta get back to where I was, right? I feel like I'm sitting on the bus on 3rd on the night that you go to the symphony, right? So that's exactly how it feels. And that's my point about the low hanging fruit. Like that whole lower area where the Nashville Symphony is, if you ever been down there on a night when you have Predators, you always got Broadway 24/7, right? And then you have Predators, you have Symphony, you have Broadway, you have
Ryman.
pedestrians, you have all of the musicians that come to the symphony that have to park about 2 blocks away, trying to even walk to get to the symphony because there's so much traffic. And our beautiful purple bus just sits there trying to move just 1 block because on their bus, because somebody has transferred to the downtown station and they're trying to get over to all of those hotels that are over on Sobro. What's that low-hanging fruit kind of plan timeline? Because I just don't think Nashvillians, because this impacts Nashvillians more than it does tourists. I don't think Nashvillians have the patience
To wait 10 years.
to wait on a 10-year plan for East Bank. I just don't think that's resonating with citizens. It's not resonating with those individuals that have to get to work, just trying to get across the Mumbrian to get to all the hotels that we have built. And so I think people are trying to work really hard and they're really trying to use transit. And if they hear we're waiting for 10 more years till East Bank gets here, another place that, well, that's East Bank, but that's 10 years from now. So how do I get to work today? And at 1:15, well, okay, I can start at 1:15, but I don't have to be at work until 4. What am I supposed to do all that time, right? And so I think that what I hear from a lot of people is you're just craving what now? I mean, you can miss a concert trying to just pull into the symphony if you got there 2 hours, speaking of 2 or 3 hours wait, and you could just sit there just trying to get, even walking, it's not even pedestrian friendly. So, because we don't get the 4-way walk on that side. Everybody else gets the, let's stop everybody, you can walk the cross. So I guess for me, and I think for a lot of Nashvillians, the question is, what now? Right now, how do I get to access the part of Nashville that I want to access? I don't want to access Broadway, but I want to access something near Broadway. And how does that happen? So some days I just feel sorry for our drivers. We all just sit in the same place and just, wave. And one night there was fire inside the fire department.
That must be why Mozart's Requiem.
Absolutely.
Okay, Marty, how about an answer for that?
It's just what I hear all the time.
Absolutely, and that sounds very much like a lot that we've heard as well. A lot of people get stuck in the garages.
Yeah.
They can't get out. They're high-paying or high-dollar, tickets
Absolutely.
to this, that, or the other, and they're expecting a different level of service, and they get stuck, and they don't like it, and they call various folks that are above all of us, and they make an impact when they
But
do that.
nothing happens.
Well, fair enough, but that's,
Must be the sun today. But and that is a problem, and I think as you present it, that question just is there, that frustration, that it takes you just to get out of the driveway of someplace an hour. And it shouldn't have to be that way. While it seems that there's, and it might not be you all, but maybe how you work with Metro Police about bringing just a little kind of control of traffic, just maybe one more block. That might be helpful. They do when the predators are there. They will have a police officer directing traffic, but.
and the event management, that is one of the components we're looking at. I didn't highlight those as much today, looking on.
I was just gonna help you. I knew you had.
That's something that you can look, when we get that draft plan out, that is something to key in on. We do have a best practices paper that we put out on that and about 10 other things that were earlier in the process. But as we get into the nitty gritty, those questions are real. Those are real issues, whether they're people working or they're people that are, again, sitting in the best seats in the house, and they're expecting to get out. So Felix, was there anything?
So I think
Maybe
the message
I
that was
can-
also
We
low-hanging
need to be
fruit.
able to message on that low-hanging fruit too.
Right, urgent, sense of urgency, low-hanging fruit, and not a message that we got to wait 10 years.
The
for this.
low-hanging
Yeah.
fruit will make marginal improvements, but it's going to continue to get worse.
Yes.
So the honest answer is, and a lot of people aren't going to want to hear it, is the answer is among the people who are complaining. If you want to keep traveling in and out of downtown at peak times in the same way you've always done it, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And all the great stuff that Marty and Diane and the folks at NDOT are working at, adaptive traffic signals, traffic management centers, event management plans, that's all great until you hit capacity. And we're already past capacity.
Very much so.
So again, we have a vested interest. When Diana and I were talking about this plan up front with folks like Tom Turner at the Downtown Partnership and TDOT, our thing is simple. You do whatever you want with curb man. Do what you want with loading zones. That's not my problem. My problem is getting that bus, through town. But if you want more people to use it, you got to make it reliable. If you tell me, Gail, if that bus can get through town 4 times faster than your car can, would you give it a try?
I would.
So
I would, but the bus
challenge-
sits just as much, so. Yeah.
But it won't if it's the only thing in the lane. And herein lies the problem. Nobody wants to give up that lane. So until Nashvillians, not NDOT, not WeGo, not TDOT, until Nashvillians say we demand bus lanes and the better service we can get with them, then it ain't going to get better. It's going to get worse. And that's a promise. And that's a traffic engineering approach. Downtown Nashville is a 5-gallon bucket. And now we're up to about 100 gallons of water that we're trying to squeeze in there.
Now, I would
I agree.
also say, though, that the transit corridors, to me, that is a huge benefit because your bus isn't going to be sitting there in the traffic. So I think all of what we're saying, and you've heard it ad nauseum, is a sense of urgency around the things that can be immediate because we don't have the ability to say it can't be fixed. We wouldn't be sitting on this board if we thought that was the answer. So whatever we can do to be sure the urgency is there and the most important things that are going to help the most, the quickest, get implemented, I think is what I'm hearing. So.
That low-hanging fruit and how we can really address it. And even if it is for that, major surgery really quick, change the lanes around. I'm all in favor of it.
Jessica,
And-
Walter, anything? Ditto's good.
And red paint doesn't take 10 years.
No, it
Right.
doesn't.
And it's possible you can start with just painting the lane, then you gradually upgrade the stations, and you gradually update the signage, whatever the approach is ultimately.
Gail
there's
and I'll
an
go out
iterative
there with a
approach.
bucket of red paint tonight.
But-
if I was
I know, we would.
But you have,
And
but
we
you have
probably
to
have
have the courage to do it in the face
Yes.
of, at a leadership level, in the face of people who are going to say, no, that's the worst possible thing you can do. Because there are going to be a lot of people who say that.
So that is something that this board can be helpful with. I think that's a great example of a kind of advocacy that we could help you with.
There's
So
12 or 13 individuals out there maybe that are in a certain spot that would want to hear that.
Yeah.
Your
it's all
candidates.
a trade-off, right? So.
And if we don't use red paint, I'm certain we have a lot of purple paint around here that we'd be happy
might be
to
able to
have
talk the
a We
engineers
Go
into that.
Purple Day.
Great
And
idea.
Close enough to read.
Yes. Okay, in the interest of time, any other comments or feedback? Thank you, and thank you for your work, because we know you have caught an earful for a long time, and it takes a,
And
it is
he
part
does
of
it with
but
grace.
That's right.
But you're doing an amazing job. You
Yeah,
are.
thank you so much.
And when you go back to the office, say that I beat it into Steve's head. It's a mobility hub.
Tell them we voted on it. That concludes the NICE committee, and my apologies, our chair knows this, but I have a personal important thing I've got to go do, so I've got to run out the door. So
Okay.
my part's done. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Great report today.
Man, this
You gave us a lot to think about,
Good
to
meeting.
talk about. We were chatty today. It was good. It was good. Thank you, Janet. I think I go to you next, Steve, for your report.
I don't feel like I've talked too much already.
Haven't we all today? It's been healthy conversation though.
Okay, well, in the interest of time, I'll keep it to a few items, but we alluded to it earlier when Jessica was asking about the budget, but this past Tuesday, Ed and I had the opportunity to appear before Metro Council's Budget and Finance Committee to present a summary of our FY 23-24 operating budget request. Very good attendance by the committee and a lot of good questions. And generally very favorable questions and a lot of good feedback. Members of council have been very appreciative of the service improvements and a lot of the initiatives. So we hope that that bodes well. With respect to upcoming elections, we will be hosting a candidates forum for Metro Nashville offices, council and mayor. These forums are an opportunity for us to provide the candidates with some background information on WeGo, to discuss some of the significant policy issues. Something tells me, Marty, that transit priority corridors is going to be on that agenda, and also to entertain any questions that they might have. And based on the RSVPs to date, we expect really good attendance. So I want to particularly thank Eric Beyer for his kind of leading that effort. We've begun to hold virtual interviews for our Chief Development Officer candidates, have some very good candidates to pursue. So I'm not in any rush because, frankly, the folks who reported to try, I used to think he was a real genius. Now I'm thinking that, man, he wasn't really doing that much work. It's all the folks who reported to him. So they're all killing it. So, frankly, I'm just kind of kicking back, and we'll hire somebody when we find the right person. I mentioned this past weekend, I had the opportunity to attend the American Public Transportation CEO Conference in Houston. Always good to get together with my peers. It's a relatively small meeting because as big an industry as transit is, there just aren't that many individual agencies. So about 100 of us there in Houston. And that was what's always reassuring is all of the problems we have, we all have. So always interesting to hear what some of the creative solutions are. You heard alluded to planning for our fall service changes that the extremely capable, competent, and wonderful Katie Freudberg and Zita Riggs have been very active in. So we're, again, looking forward to service hour extensions, some better frequency on some routes, and notably continuing to expand our WeGo Link Mobility On Demand program. We'll be looking to add to 4 more zones in the Burton Hills neighborhood, the Rosebank neighborhood, Brick Church Pike area, and Old Hickory. I have to give a particularly heroic Medal of Honor award to Billy Higgins, our capital grant administrator, who always does an amazing job, but never more so than once every 3 years when we have our triennial review with the Federal Transit Administration. And really all of the staff that were involved, which is essentially all of the staff, did an amazing job. But Billy is the one herding the cats. We had our exit conference with the FTA earlier this week. We'll get our draft report on the 23rd of June or so, final report in July. But I will tell you that the results were really positive and a lot of kudos. I hope Billy's not here. I hope she's taking some vacation time or maybe on a beach somewhere because she's certainly earned it. Working. Of course, no rest for the weary. Also, a couple shout outs. I think Robert Johnson and Phil Randall are here. Are you guys here? Okay, wave your hands. So after Felix's planning department was gutted by NDOT and our own operations department, stealing Justin Cole and Hannah Schaefer, Phil and Robert are joining us, and they have phenomenal backgrounds. We're super glad to have them. starting to worry. Robert came over from TDOT, so I think Commissioner Ely is going to start to cast a bad eye on me when he sees me. But Phil is a real grab for us. Everybody talks about the Austin-Nashville competition. And Phil is coming here from Austin, where he finished his degree work at the University of Texas at Austin. So, and if you ever listen to Robert, you will also know that he is probably not a native-born Southerner as well. So great to have those folks coming in. Also, you don't get to hear from him very often. You got to hear from him today. I really want to give a particular shout out, congratulations, thank you, and well wishes to Yule Krieger, our vehicle maintenance manager. Yule is going to be retiring from WeGo Public Transit specifically, but public transportation in general, to do the things that we all aspire to do, spend more time with our families, travel, and take care of business. You manage this fleet on a day-to-day basis. There isn't a whole lot of downtime. So prior to being with us, Yule was with AC Transit out in Oakland, California, so he truly is a national expert on bus fleets. And we've been delighted and proud to have his services for how many years now, Yule? So yeah, phenomenal job. Every year when Carl and Andy get to take bows on that annual fleet maintenance audit, that you all see and the continued progress being made there. Yule and his crew are largely the ones making that happen. Couple quick updates on the RTA side. We continue to work with our Hatch Consulting Group on our STAR Future Vision study. They're laying out a few scenarios on how we might repurpose and adapt the STAR to our changing travel demographics. We continue slowly but surely to advance work on the negotiations on joint development at our Donaldson Station with the development partnership with Southeast Venture and Hill. We got our initial appraisals in, and those are moving forward. And we're also advancing land acquisition toward a permanent park and ride in Murfreesboro, Rutherford County, which is sorely needed. So, unless there are any questions, Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
I have none. Anybody have any questions for Steve? I have just sort of a quick report. I did a lot of the things Steve said, and welcome to new members of our WeGo team. It's great to have you here. Happy retirement. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. And I want to welcome, Margaret has 2 summer interns from Vanderbilt's Law School here today. And welcome. And I know you're going to have a great experience working with Margaret and her firm this summer. It's just amazing lawyers. And so you're on the road to learning all you need to know between Margaret and Vanderbilt. Anchor down. You're going to be great. So nice to meet both of you. Steve, I wanted to say thank you to Steve because Steve asked me maybe about 2-3 weeks ago to serve on the Community Advisory Board for selecting the artist to do both the digital and the mural work for the Rip Patton North Nashville Transit Center. And of course, I said yes. And I have had an extraordinary experience. First of all, I want to say that Rachel did an incredible job, not just with the process of us going through it, and we haven't completely concluded it yet, but not just in organizing the process, but just how she dealt with all those who submitted an RFP, their teams, making certain that everybody had everything they needed, and also how she informed all of us on the committee. It was just extraordinarily well done, Rachel. I've been on search committees, a lot of other things, and I would say that your work was exemplary. So thank you. And I believe those who submitted RFPs would say the same thing. So just wanted to say thank you very much. And Kia was right there with her, and I thought that she did an amazing job as well. It was like we had this team of professionals, and I was extraordinarily proud to be your board chair and be in that process with you. But just to sort of talk about a little bit, I want to give a shout out to Rita, who's not here, of course, but she had this idea when we first started talking about doing this Rip Patton North Nashville Transit Center about how community should be advising in this process. And so as we first started with the community, when we first starting the design process, everything, we had a community team, and it's continuing. And what's happening with that is that community is embracing transit. A community that has felt left out is embracing transit. And they're embracing WeGo, and they are seeing WeGo's commitment to communities, to the North Nashville community, to the history, to the good history, to the history that wasn't as good as maybe it should have been, and also to the future of transit and what it can mean for so many different communities. And what was so good about it is we have some incredible artists in Nashville. So many, and we have these collaboration of artists, whether or not it's digital. I learned a lot about digital because I'm like not really there, but the artists, so the digital, the murals, when you drive around Nashville, look at some of the murals that you see around town because they're telling stories. They're telling stories about Nashville. They're telling stories about what our future can be, what our history has been, and how it both leads us to these things. And that's what transit does. We talk a lot about equity in transit. You start to see where these projects and engaging community at this level and at this time and place and planning will make such a difference for our community. And it just makes everybody realize transit and say, will they ride downtown? Yeah, they'll ride downtown because they'll always know that they can trust us. They know that we have the community in our heart and we have the community in everything that we do. So I just wanted to commend you again, and I want you all to pay attention to these young artists. They are amazing, and they are rocking this city, and they are using art for social justice, and they are using art to communicate the needs of Nashville in ways that all of us can be better citizens here. So I want to congratulate those artists. And I want to congratulate and just say I'm inspired by them. And Trey Harden from the Harden Group has also done an incredible job of navigating all of us through this process. And to watch someone who has such a passion for community art has also been really a big gain for WeGo as we do this project. So as we continue to do our marketing, as we continue to put WeGo every place, we have to remember, not only do we have more people to rely on other than just graphics in our department, but we have young artists that want to help us brand, that want to be a part of what we do. And I'm grateful that I had this opportunity. So Steve, thank you for calling me that day, asking me to do it, and asking me in a way that I would not say no. And I'm grateful. And the thing after today,
Do you want to be on the committee to get dedicated lanes downtown?
yeah, I'm about ready for that run too, right? Today I am, but tomorrow I don't know. You're gonna catch when catch can, right? But today we had a good meeting, and I think today was a day of a lot of good conversation, a lot of really good things. And what you see in this room, and I say it time and time again, we have so many committed professionals. You all are experts in what you do. You are collegial. You are a community of transit professionals, and I'm grateful to work for you. And just keep lifting one another, keep taking care of one another, keep respecting one another, because I love Aretha Franklin. So just make certain that we continue to be that culture of community here. So grateful that I had that opportunity. It really was an extraordinary experience for me, and I thank you for that. I'm inspired by it. And I don't have anything more for my report. Other than Katie and Zeta are great, right? But so are all of you. So thank you all very much.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.